I'm Idiotech, and this is a roundup video. Basically what I've done is taken all the games from E3 for PC that I thought had something to offer, that were interesting in some way, and I've collated them together and given you my thoughts and opinions on them. So without further ado, let's get into the list. It's in no particular order. I hope you enjoyed the video. The first game on my list is Quake Champions. Now, when I saw this logo come up on the screen at the Bethesda press conference, a part of me, a small part of me that still isn't completely deadened to PR and marketing, became incredibly excited. I loved Quake 3 Arena, I loved Quake 2, I loved Quake 1, I loved Unreal Tournament. I grew up during this era. This was my prime in terms of FPS. I would love to see a modern version of Quake 3 Arena, done in the new Idiotech engine, something akin to Doom, a remaster. But that's not what we're going to get. What we're going to get is a hero shooter with classes and abilities. Now, for those of you who have played Quake 3 Arena, you will know that's not at all what Quake 3 Arena is about. Quake 3 Arena is about pickups, it's about jumping, it's about movement, it's about rocket jumping. It's a skill-based game, not an abilities-based game. We all have the same health pool. It's very competitive. However, that doesn't seem to be the direction they're going in. Now, a lot of people have expressed concerns to Bethesda and id Software that this is not the right direction. And I think, honestly, at this point in time, the market is very open to the idea of arena shooters, thanks to Overwatch, and we don't all have to be the same. It would be great to see a developer try and be a traditional arena shooter in this time period. I think it could work really well. But money decides, and in this case, it seems like they're going with a copy and paste model rather than sticking to the roots of what Quake is about. The other negative is that Saber Interactive are the developers behind this game. That's a problem because Saber Interactive made Halo Master Chief Collection, which was a nightmare and I don't think even still works to this day. So I'm incredibly doubtful that this will be a good game. However, until we see footage at QuakeCon later this year, I'm going to try and reserve my judgment. Let's talk about Battlefield 1. Now, we did get a full trailer this time. It is pre-rendered. It doesn't tell us anything about the game. It looks incredibly cool. It does show off some of the weapons, some of the planes, some of the tanks, things like that. So that's nice to see, and some of the dynamic weather and destruction. Now, the game itself was streamed, the multiplayer component at least, for an hour, and we did get an opportunity to see how it plays. I was kind of disappointed by this. The mechanics don't seem to have changed a huge amount from the previous Battlefield titles, and I think they've missed an opportunity there as World War I was very unique in terms of its warfare, its tactics, and the strategy that was employed, so it would be cool to see some additional changes, maybe some new game modes. You know, a game like Verdun. Verdun took the World War I format and did something very interesting with it. It wasn't boring. Trench warfare can be fun. Verdun proved that, and I would have liked to have seen some more of those types of mechanics incorporated into Battlefield 1. That being said, I will still play the game. The setting appeals to me greatly, as does the old technology. I much prefer World War I, World War II as a setting to the modern military shooter. I'm also very interested in the single-player campaign to see what they do with it, see if they incorporate any real history, try and tell some stories there, so that would be cool. I'm just slightly disappointed that they didn't utilize the setting and theme to enhance their mechanics or do something a little different in terms of gameplay. That being said, it will likely be Game of the Year for many people, and I am looking forward to it. Next up is Titanfall 2. Now, when this game came out as Titanfall 1 a couple of years ago, I think it was 2014, I was very excited because the developers from the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2 had moved over to EA, created a new studio called Respawn Entertainment, and the idea of mechs and boots-on-the-ground combat, combined with AI as well as human players, was very appealing to me. And when I first played the game, I loved it. I found it incredibly enjoyable. The problem with Titanfall was that it didn't have enough content, it didn't have a deep enough progression system, and people became tired of it very, very quickly. After about 2 months, no one played the game anymore. Now, it also didn't have a single-player campaign. It seems this time around, they've gone about beefing up the title. They've added a full single-player campaign. We did get to see a trailer for that, and it does look kind of compelling. You know, in the first game, we didn't get any real story, and I think people would have liked that personally. Whether or not people will actually play that remains to be seen, but we will see. Now, in terms of multiplayer, it looks virtually identical. They've added a grappling hook. They've added 6 new Titans. They've tried to add some more strategy to the Titan gameplay. So we'll see. I have high hopes for this. I think Titanfall 2 will be what Titanfall 1 should have been, and I think it's going to be good. I really do. I hope it lasts a little bit longer this time around and people don't drop off so quickly, because I do think the core mechanics of Titanfall are very compelling. I love the wall running. I love the fluidity of the movement system. I love the combat. I thought it was a little too newbie friendly. It didn't offer enough of a competitive edge. And the Titan gameplay, while fun at first, did get stale pretty quickly, and there was not much in terms of a progression system. So a single player combined with a more fleshed out multiplayer, I think could make for a very enjoyable game. However, it's coming out during a time when a lot of other big games are dropping, so we will have to see. But I'm kind of excited for Titanfall 2. So let's talk about Prey. This was announced at the Bethesda conference, and we didn't get a huge amount of information, but what we did get was incredibly intriguing. Basically, what we know now is that Prey is not going to be a sequel to the original Prey game. Originally, they planned to make Prey 2, that was cancelled, and this is essentially what we get in its place. Now, we got to see a pre-rendered trailer. However, that trailer was extremely impressive. It got me very interested to see more, which I guess is kind of the point of a trailer. And it was set in a sci-fi future dystopian world. This guy's being experimented on. He ends up in a space station talking to himself in a mirror. There's all this weird black ooze shit that's trying to kill him. It looks like a first-person shooter with horror elements. Now, I'm usually not a massive fan of horror games, but this game has me seriously interested, so I may have to endure freaking the shit out of myself in order to play this game. It's also made by Arcane Studios, which are the guys behind Dishonored, if you don't know, so that's another reason to check out this title and keep an eye on it. I would strongly suggest you go watch the trailer. All of the trailer links are in the description box below. The next game has been highly anticipated by a number of people, and that is Dishonored 2, another game brought to us by Arcane Studios. Now, we didn't get to see as much as I expected this year, given the fact that the game was actually announced at last year's E3. We saw an engine demo, and while it was quite impressive and the lighting has been improved and it does look significantly better than the previous game, and we also saw some highly edited gameplay segments, and they ran us through them and explained some of the new mechanics. Now, this time we get to play as two characters instead of one. We get to play as Emily from the first game and Corvo from the first game. They each have their own unique skill sets and abilities. There also seems to be some kind of time traveling mechanic, and that looks very interesting. However, it's kind of more of the same. If you didn't like the first game, there's not a huge amount here that's going to change your mind, I don't think. Now, I had some complaints on a mechanical level about the first game and its stealth combat and some of the mechanics. I found some of the levels significantly harder than other levels, and the difficulty spikes didn't seem to be particularly well balanced. It was also an incredibly short game. So hopefully all of those issues have been addressed this time around. I love the setting, I love the visuals. There are not many games in that steampunky type of universe these days, and Dishonored certainly fills that niche. So I hope it's a good game. I'm pretty sure it will be a good game, and it's definitely a game worth keeping your eye on moving forward. The next game I want to talk about is Ghost Recon Wildlands. Now, this game was announced at last year's E3 to reasonable amount of fanfare. It's a cool looking game. It's a co-op tactical shooter set in an open world, obviously in the Tom Clancy universe, and on its surface, it appeals to me. Now, Ubisoft did give us some gameplay this year. It was highly scripted, full of actors, the usual way that they present these things, and I don't like that because it doesn't represent the gameplay in the way it would actually be played. Now, some journalists did get the opportunity to play the game, and so far there's some mixed feelings on the title. Now, it isn't finished yet, so it's not really fair to review it, but I am cautiously optimistic. Ubisoft brought a lot to the table this year, and they kind of look the same as each other, a lot of the games. We've got The Division, which is already out. Obviously, that's using the Snowdrop engine. We have Ghost Recon Wildlands using the Snowdrop engine. We have Watch Dogs 2 using the Snowdrop engine. This engine seems to be built around the idea of open world games in third person, and as a result, the movement, the combat systems, they all look kind of similar to each other, and that is slightly concerning. However, I am interested in Ghost Recon Wildlands just for the fact that it's a tactical shooter, that it's co-op, that it seems to have the potential for lots of emergent gameplay, lots of interesting situations. You can approach missions in different ways, stealth, full force, tactical approaches, use drones, things like that. On its surface, it appeals to me. I'm just concerned about its execution, and as we all know, Ubisoft have a reputation of hyping games at E3 and then under-delivering on release. So I'm eager to get my hands on this one. I will be reviewing it, but I'm going to be cautiously optimistic at this point. Now, this is a franchise I never thought I'd be talking about on PC, and that is Forza. Forza Horizon 3 to be precise. Now, the reason this stood out to me is because A, it's set in Australia, which is where I live. Now, Australia doesn't get a huge amount of love when it comes to video games, and as you can see in the trailer, it offers extremely diverse locations and environments to play in, and I think that's really cool. It's nice to see some locations I've actually been to in real life. So, you know, Australia, I'm Australian, whatever. I like it for that reason. Another reason I'm interested is that we've never actually had a Forza Horizon game on PC before, and this is a huge shift in direction for Microsoft. This year, every Microsoft Xbox exclusive was also available on Windows 10, and they made a big point of telling everyone that at their conference. Depending on how you feel about this and the Windows 10 store and upgrading to Windows 10 and all that, that's not really relevant to me. What matters to me is that Microsoft are making a concerted effort to try and move their games from Xbox over to PC. How that's done, how it's handled, I'm sure all of that will improve as we go forward, but it's good to see these Xbox exclusives no longer be exclusive just to the Xbox, so I'm happy to see that. Another reason is that I kind of like driving games. I'm not a huge car guy, but I really enjoy driving games. I have a wheel. I play simulation games primarily. However, sometimes it is nice just to drive around an open world and have some arcadey fun. So, I'm kind of looking forward to Forza Horizon 3. Now it's time to talk about Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, this game almost didn't make it onto the list. Mass Effect 1 and 2 are some of my all-time favorite video games. What BioWare did with Mass Effect 3 was a massive slap in the face to fans. That being said, I can't help but be somewhat interested, as the Mass Effect universe is fucking amazing. We didn't get much info, right? And we didn't get much info last year either, and that does leave me slightly concerned. And based on what we did get, it's hard to tell exactly what the game is going to be like. I have my suspicions that it's not really going to be like the previous Mass Effect games. What we do know is that it will feature a new cast of characters, and it will be set in the Andromeda galaxy, with a bunch of new alien civilizations, so it kind of seems like they're throwing everything they built up away, which is a strange choice. The game will also be using the Frostbite engine, and based on the gameplay trailer, well, I say gameplay trailer, it was highly edited, there was lots of pre-rendered stuff in there, but based on some moments of gameplay we kind of saw in that trailer, it does look extremely good on a visual level, which is always good when it comes to Mass Effect. It's going to take a lot of good PR to make me forget the damage that was done by Mass Effect 3, but I am willing to give this one a shot, provided it actually gets finished, because so far we've had 2 years of very little information. Let's talk about Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Now, this game has been getting a lot of hate as of late, as I'm sure many of you are aware. It has one of the most downvoted videos in all of history on YouTube for its previous trailer. However, during the Sony conference, they released the new single-player gameplay trailer, and it was really kind of impressive. What they did was they waited until after Sony had finished showcasing all of their VR products. I had no idea going into the trailer that it was for Call of Duty, and during the trailer, I was really impressed. I was sitting there going, what is this game, man? It looks really cool. Well, we saw dogfighting, we saw grappling hooks, we saw anti-gravity grenades, we saw all kinds of new and interesting mechanics, and a really compelling setting. It was a great trailer. I am now interested in a game I previously had no interest in whatsoever. Does that mean it's going to be a good game? Probably not. Most of the recent Call of Duty games have been significantly lacking in both the single-player and multiplayer departments, and I imagine this will be no different. They're cranking these things out at a furious rate these days, and as a result, the quality has suffered. Still, I'm now interested to see what the game has to offer on release, whereas before I had no interest whatsoever. I do suggest you watch the trailer, by the way. It was very impressive. You'll find it in the description box down below. Now, this is a game from Ubisoft I am actually excited for. This is possibly one of my most anticipated games from E3 this year. Ever since I saw the announcement for Honor at last year's E3, I've wanted to know more about this game. This year we got footage of the single-player campaign, and in particular the Viking campaign. First of all, the game looks stunning on a visual level. The combat seems to focus on tells, movement, predicting the opponent's next move. It all looks very fluid, and the animations especially seem extremely satisfying. It's a setting and theme that I find personally extremely compelling. We've got samurai, we've got knights, we've got Vikings. The game also has a strong multiplayer component, as we saw last year, and they seem to have combined it with the AI systems you might find in a MOBA, so you've got loads of little AI minions to kill, and then you fight players as well. It looks really cool. I mean, I am super excited for Honor. I can't wait to try this game when it comes out, and there's not a huge amount else to say about it. It looks like a really solid combat game, focusing on the idea of medieval knights versus samurai versus Vikings. Hopefully it has a compelling single-player campaign to go along with what already looks like a pretty good multiplayer experience. Let's hope they don't screw it up. Next up is another game in a medieval setting, and that is Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord. Now, we did know some things about this prior to E3. However, at the PC gaming show, they showed off some new footage, showed off some mechanics, and it was pretty exciting. Now, the previous games I really enjoyed, especially the multiplayer components. They offer a very deep and compelling combat system, which prior to those games had never been seen before. The problem with the games is that they were extremely clunky, they didn't look particularly good, and they were not very accessible to newcomers. So I'm hoping those issues are resolved in Mount and Blade 2. The footage we got to see was of the new siege mechanics. Essentially how this works is in order to take over territory in the single-player game at least, I'm not sure how this works in the multiplayer, but in order to take over territory, you have to capture castles or forts as you would in the real world. And so in order to do this, they have added destruction, they've added ballista, catapults, battering rams, they've added defenses for the people inside the castle, such as oil pots that they can set on fire. You can siege the walls. It looks pretty fucking cool. When you combine that with the already existing combat system, I'm extremely excited to play this. I just hope they address some of the clunkiness from previous games. The next game on the list is Dawn of War 3. Now, having recently been converted into a 40k fan, I'm excited about it for that reason, but I'm also excited because as a long-term StarCraft 2 player, I'm looking for another competitive RTS. Now, whether this will be competitive or not remains to be seen, but it looks like it has the potential to be. They're going back to the old school style of base building mechanics from Dawn of War 1, but they're also including hero units very similar to Warcraft 3, so that's an interesting combination of factors. They're adding additional unit types, which also looks cool. We've got drop pod mechanics. It looks very visually impressive when you consider that there are hundreds and hundreds of units on the battlefield. One complaint I do have on a visual level is that it does seem extremely colorful, lots of particle effects, and I think it may be kind of difficult to read what exactly is going on as you're playing the game. They may tune that stuff down as time goes on. This game is very much in development. Am I excited for Dawn of War 3? Very much. Now, as we know about the campaign so far, it has 3 factions. So similar to Warcraft 3 in the way that it's going to jump from faction to faction to faction and tell a different story. I think that's a good idea because in the previous 2 games, they focused entirely on Space Marines, and I think it's a good idea to try and encompass some other things within the lore. So yeah, overall, it looks really promising. It looks like it's going to bring the good things from Dawn of War 1, combine it with some of the lessons they learned from Dawn of War 2, add some new mechanics, and have a fleshed out and compelling campaign with 3 races. The next game on the list, when I saw the trailer for it, reminded me instantly of Brave New World and 1984. It's set in a dystopian 1960s England where everyone is taking a drug called joy to remain happy, and everyone around you is extremely creepy. Now, based on what I can tell from the trailer and having read a few things about it, it seems to be a survival game with both a sandbox and story mode involved. There seems to be a fully voice-acted story, which is good to see because that's primarily what I'm interested in, but also survival mechanics and permadeath. So it's almost like a roguelike combined with a Bioshock-esque story experience. Kind of interesting. So it comes out pretty soon in early access. I think it's around the end of July. So I will be checking this game out, and hopefully it looks as good and plays as well as the trailer seems to suggest. The next game on the list was announced at this Sony press conference, and it's called Death Stranding. It's the new game from Kojima Productions, and it involves Norman Reedus. So the trailer is incredibly difficult to describe, and I do suggest you go check out the description box below and watch it for yourself. But basically, we see Norman Reedus on a beach, naked, covered in handprints, with a crying baby next to him. He has a C-section, the baby becomes invisible and starts painting him with weird oil. Then he stands up and all the fish are dead, and then there's 5 floating people in the sky. So literally we know nothing about it. It's a Kojima game. I am interested to try this, and it's good to see the game is coming out on both PS4 and PC. There's really not much else to say. It's a Kojima game. It will be very strange, I imagine very story-focused, and yeah, cool people involved. I'm interested to check it out when it finally releases. The people in my Discord can attest to how much I squeed over the next game when it was announced at E3, and that is Gwent, the card game based on the Witcher 3 card game. Now, they seem to have improved this significantly. I imagine it's going to be coming out on tablets as well as PC. You can currently sign up for the alpha. If you played Gwent in The Witcher 3 and you loved it as much as I did, then you will be extremely excited for this announcement. I would still like a physical card game that I can purchase, but for now, I will deal with a digital version instead. We don't know a huge amount about it, but I imagine, based on what I played during the Witcher 3 campaign, that it's very similar with a few balance tweaks here and there to make the multiplayer aspect of the game more manageable. Finally, we get to play fucking Gwent. Thank you, CD Projekt Red. Now, the next game is called Observer, and there's not a huge amount to say about this because we only really got a 30-second teaser trailer at the PC Gaming Show. It's made by the developers who created Layers of Fear, and it's a new horror game, essentially set in a dystopian, futuristic cyberpunk universe. The premise behind the game is that you hack into criminals' minds and explore their memories and their thoughts, and it gets pretty fucking creepy at points. I'm not entirely sure of the story, but I imagine you hack into a particularly nasty criminal's mind and it all goes to hell. Now, it looks really compelling. The visuals are extremely impressive. It's a first-person narrative-driven horror game, as we've seen many times before, but the setting, as well as the concept, has me actually interested and may force me to overcome my fear of horror games. The next game on the list is Dropzone. Now, this was debuted at the PC Gaming Show also, and it's an attempt to combine MOBA and RTS. Essentially, you control 3 characters on each side. It's a 1v1 multiplayer game mode, and each game lasts for around 15 minutes, so it's compact and intense. The idea, I guess, is to try and resurrect the RTS genre, which is quickly being cannibalized by the MOBA genre. I like the idea in theory. I like the idea of having to control 3 heroes simultaneously, micromanage all of their movements. I like the fact that it's 1v1. I think that's the truest, most pure form of competitive RTS you can offer. And it looks pretty as well. So I am interested in this game. I would like to see more information about it. Right now, it doesn't seem to be getting a lot of attention from the mainstream press, but I think as an old school RTS player, it does have some potential and it's worth keeping an eye on. Now, this doesn't really belong on the list, so to speak, because it is a piece of free downloadable content for a game that's been out for an extremely long time, and that game is Warframe. They announced at the PC Gaming Show that they're going to be introducing a new PvP game mode. That game mode doesn't focus on combat this time, though. It focuses on a sports game. If you imagine Warframe, the crazy movement system involved there, with Rocket League, that's essentially what you have. You can have up to 4 players per team. It's essentially a game of football, but with the motion and movement mechanics you find in Warframe. And if you haven't played Warframe yet, I strongly encourage you to go and do so. It's a free-to-play game on Steam, and it's absolutely amazing. I sunk 100 hours into that game prior to having to move on to other games. If you want to know more about it, you can go watch my content on the Co-optional podcast where I talked to Total Biscuit about it for an extremely long period of time. It's a fantastic game, and I'm happy to see them expanding out and trying some new mechanics, taking those ideas from Rocket League, combining them with the fantastic movement system that you find in Warframe. I think it's a stellar idea, and I can't wait to play it. The last game on my list, and I do apologize for the length of this video, I did not expect it to run this long, but there were a lot of games this year that were very interesting, is South Park: The Fractured Butthole. Now, the previous game, yes, and I know the name is funny, the previous game was called The Stick of Truth. The idea in that game was you are the new kid in town, and Cartman is running a role-playing session, I guess, and you have to find the Stick of Truth and protect the Stick of Truth, and it was quite funny. There was tons of South Park humor in there. It was very true to the show. The core problem the game had was that the RPG mechanics and the combat system were not particularly involved. It was a very simple turn-based Final Fantasy-style combat system, and it became kind of draining and boring after a while. They've changed the system significantly this time around. It seems to be more of a grid-focused turn-based combat system. I guess the comparison I could make would be XCOM-like. It's kind of a stretch, but you know, they've changed the system dramatically, which is a good thing because the previous combat system was somewhat lacking. They've also added 16 character classes this time around, which should give a decent amount of variety. I imagine they're trying to resolve some of the other issues the game had as well. This time the theme is superheroes, so it's apparently the next day in South Park, and they're all pretending to be superheroes instead. It looks a lot more frantic, a lot more funny, a lot more frenetic in terms of its combat system. So yeah, I'm excited to play this. The last game was great. Hopefully this game is even better. And that brings us to the end of the list. There was a lot of content this year on other platforms that I was also excited to check out. Horizon Zero Dawn looks like a very compelling game. Days Gone with the crazy horde zombie modes. These are all on PS4. You know, there were a lot of other games on other platforms that did look cool as well, not just on PC. but these are the games on PC that I thought were the most interesting, and while it wasn't the most exciting year at E3, I do think we have a decent amount of content to look forward to. If you like my videos and want to support my channel, you can like, comment, share, and subscribe. You can also support me on Patreon. You will find a link to that in the description below. Thank you once again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.